noise!
Hello and welcome to another edition of Truth and Rhythm, brought to you by funkinstuff.net. This is the interview show that gets deep in the pocket with contemporary music's foremost masters of the groove. I'm your host, Scott Dr. Jigs Goldfine, musicologist and author of Everything's on the One, the First Guide to Funk. If you don't have your copy, get on over to Amazon and pick one up. You'll be so glad you did. Whether you're watching the video version of this at funkinstuff.net or on YouTube, or listening to the audio-only podcast version from providers like iTunes and Spotify, as always, I thank you so much for your continued interest and support in the show. Speaking of which, if you haven't already done so, subscribe to the Funk and Stuff channel on YouTube. That's where Truth and Rhythm lives. All kinds of goodies. You'll get early premieres, and it's all free, so make sure you sign up. Tell a friend, tell family. Also, get your official Truth and Rhythm and Funk and Stuff gear at the funkinstuff.net store. Cool stuff like I'm wearing right here. Truth and Rhythm shirts. Show your support and love of the show and also the musicians and the music that they represent. Also want to give a shout out to the Funk Exhibition Center and Hall of Fame in Dayton, Ohio, of which I'm very proud to be an official funk ambassador. Go to thefunkcenter.org to learn more and keep the funk alive. And now, with all that, it's time to get on with the show. Enjoy. I'm thrilled to welcome to the Truth and Rhythm Mothership Byron Miller, a.k.a. Funky Boy, a.k.a. Psycho Bass, a composer, producer, and as you might have gathered, an extraordinary bass master. Starting out in the mid-1970s as a member of the short-lived funk band The Counts, he played with Ayers, Ubiquity, and Santana before making his biggest impact as a career-long collaborator with keyboarding wizard George Duke. In particular, his prominent bass was front and center on Duke's 1977 funk classic Reach For It. Miller went on to play with greats like Herbie Hancock, Ramsey Lewis, Norman Connors, Stanley Turrentine, Stanley Clarke, Joe Sample, Philip Bailey, Jeffrey Osborne, a 16-year stint with Luther Vandross, and even Beyonce. He has also released 5 albums himself since 1990, including the super funky Psycho Bass 1 and 2 from 2015 and 2018. Byron, thank you for joining the show. How are you?
I'm good. You did your homework, huh?
I try, you know.
You pulled the Counts out of the hat. Wow.
Yeah.
People don't never ask me about the Counts.
Yeah? Well, I'm going to.
Right. All right.
Yeah. Well, it helps when you're a fan, you know. So I don't go back as far as the Counts, but I definitely go back to, you know, the beginning of George Duke. So we'll talk about that. Where are you coming to us from today, Byron?
I'm in Altadena, California. I'm in a place called the B Spot, which is my recording studio. And this is where I do all my psycho bass. I do all my bass playing here now. If you want me to play on the session, you got to send it to me, and I'll do it here. Because it's a pandemic, I'm here. So Altadena's the B Spot, and that's where I get down at. It's my place.
Yeah, well, I lived for a long time on the west side, Culver City, Santa Monica, grew up there, okay. So yeah, I know the region pretty well.
You're East Coast now?
Yeah, outside Charlotte since 2006.
Okay.
Yeah, so.
All right.
But my heart's still, you know, out there. That's why I represent.
Yeah, I'm a diehard Laker. I mean, I love my Pistons and my Lions. I'm a diehard Lion fan. So my heart is broken every year. But they won last week, so I'm happy.
Well, I don't know if you can see behind me on the wall there, but unfortunately right now I'm also a Dallas Cowboys fan. So it's a rough season.
Yeah, it's really hard. Dak went down. Ugly.
Ugly. Out. Very ugly. Yeah. So thrilled to have you on. Thank you so much for making the time. Much appreciated. And fans are going to love it. Been looking forward to sharing your story with them.
My pleasure.
Yeah. So let's jump in with your origins back in Detroit. And we were talking before we came on that you actually, played with the young Magic Johnson. So that's very cool. But I also want to know about, your roots in music and Motown, man. It's all about music, right? So
yeah.
How'd you gravitate towards the bass, Byron?
It was not intentional. It was kind of magical, really. What happened was, when I was a young kid, my mom had me taking piano lessons. That lasted about 3 months, and I didn't get along with the teacher. And she had a ruler. She was slapping my hands, and I wasn't having it. So I went from that to trying to play sports, and I played little league football. I played football in junior high, and I played football as a freshman in high school. And I broke my foot as a quarterback. We were 0-9 every year. So we had a crazy offensive line. It was crazy. So the first game, I broke my foot. So I was in a cast. I couldn't do anything. And my mother, I don't know where she came up with it, but she stopped at a music store and bought me this bass and brought it home and put it in my hands. And I taught myself how to play it. Never had a lesson, never wanted a lesson, and just always knew. At this point, I never remember not being able to play. So it's just kind of magical to me. It's deep how that happened, So credit Frederica Miller. She knew. She seen my gift. And I don't even know how she seen it because she never heard me play anything. So that's what happened. That's why I still do it,
Wow. I had no idea when we brought up Dak Prescott that there'd be synergy with what happened to you.
Right. But Dak, no, I didn't break my foot like that. No, that was crazy. His thing was going the other way. I broke my foot. I was in a cast. So a lot of Motown records, a lot of listening to Jameson with a turntable, learning them songs note for note. That's how I learned how to play.
Wow. So were you always, attracted to that particular music, or you just found it was good for learning the bass?
I was attracted to all kind of music, like the CTI records, all the jazz records. My cousin, who's passed away since then, was a guitar player. And he was a bad cat, and he was into Coltrane and everything. So he kind of kept me schooled up. Even though I couldn't play that stuff, he kept me schooled up. And we listened to Black Sabbath, Santana. We listened to Freddie Hubbard, George Benson, George Duke. All in high school. And never knew I would ever play with George Duke, but I was a fan back when I was learning how to play. And a lot of James Jameson and Chuck Rainey. Those are really pretty much my teachers without teaching me. So I grew up listening to everything. Sun Ra, just crazy. Miles Davis, everybody.
And I think I saw in your bio you also mentioned some of the usual suspects like Larry Graham and
you can't play the bass and you didn't listen to Larry Graham. I was doing a TV show called The Vibe. Greg Fillingames was the musical director. I was the house band, the bass player. Larry Graham came through there. I was like a kid. I was asking him for his autograph. And then Larry said, "Man, I've been listening to you." It kind of blew me away. Same thing, I met Willie Weeks. And big fan. Willie's a bad cat. He said, "Man, I've been listening to you for years." So it's funny how I just kind of turned around. Sometimes you do what you do and you don't know who's listening.
Yeah, that's got to be an incredible thrill when that happens.
Thrill. Stanley Clarke the same way. We're very good friends to today, but he was listening. Alphonso Johnson, a lot of cats that I was listening to ended up listening to me. So we talk about it now. We have those stories now that everybody's older and getting old. But it's a good thing. We're still doing it.
So, what was your first, significant band experience? Playing with others and kind of getting the feel for that.
It was a band in Detroit called the Ebony Set, and Ricky Lawson was a drummer who passed about 5 years ago. Ricky played with Duke, he played with Michael Jackson, he played with everybody. Ricky was the drummer in that band. David Miles was the guitar player. The leader of the band was Victor Hall, and Victor got a master's degree from Eastern Michigan. He was a little older than us, so he kind of taught us how to play as a combo. And we played gigs around Detroit, and that was my first experience playing with other cats playing some good music. So it was the Ebony Set out of Detroit. So, cats, we were pretty famous locally.
Yeah. And about how much time transpired between that and the Counts experience?
It almost happened during the same time, because the Counts, I remember Leroy came to a club we were playing, and he checked me out, and then another drummer named Leslie Daniels, who ended up giving me my first precision bass that I played Reach For It on. Leslie was a drummer with the Counts, and he said, "Hey, man, we want to fly you to Atlanta to do this record." And I heard about the Counts when I was coming up; they were a famous group there. I said, "The Counts, really?" So I went out to Atlanta and did this record called The Funk Pump, and I forget the name of the record, but that's how I got turned on to the Counts, through Leslie Daniels, who was a drummer, older drummer, who kind of took me under his wing. Leslie actually called me Goldfinger, because he said, "Man, you just got a neck to playing that bass." And I was always trying to learn. I never had a music lesson, so I didn't ever think I was that good. But they flew me out there, paid me, and that's how I got hooked up with the Counts, the fabulous Counts from Detroit.
And how was it for you being in the studio for the first time?
I was terrified. The red light went on, you can't mess up. But I had done a couple of sessions in Detroit for Westbound Records, where they would put a big sheet of music in front of me and go and count it off, and I'm sitting there, I can't read music. I'm like, okay. So I would always have a piano player play the bass line. You play the bass line once, I got it. Note for note, I could remember what it was. So that's how I did sessions in those days. Later on, I learned how to read. But, it was, in the early days, it was frightening when that red light went on, because you knew you couldn't mess up. So I went from being terrified to getting excited when the red light comes. When it comes on now, I'm a different cat.
I've heard that kind of story from a lot of musicians, sort of fake it until you can make it. And
I fake my butt off, man.
Yeah, but on some level, do you think that makes you have to even be sort of like that much better in terms of feel and all that, because you have to compensate for not being able to do the reading?
Absolutely. You have to reach for other stuff. Mm-hmm. And you kind of take a bass line that they wrote out for you, and you play it as well as you can memorize it, and you kind of put your own thing to it, and you make them love it. So I used to make them love or make them change their bass line by doing stuff. And I was like, I heard what you did there, but can we try this? Oh yeah, let's do that. Not remembering what they did. So I would make them love what I did. And that's how I made it. That's how I faked my way through it. I would call it faking. It's, it's faking. It's faking.
Well, that aspect of it, the playing is certainly for real.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what happened from that point? You ended up somewhere hooking up with Ndugu Chancellor and kind of doing some stuff with him. How did you go from the Counts and what you're doing to starting that part of your career?
Well, I did the Counts and I was playing with the Ebony Set, and Ricky Lawson was playing with the Ebony Set. And there's a club in Detroit called Watts Mozambique, where me and Ricky used to sneak in to go see Roy Ayers play. So one night we snuck in and we told Roy, let us sit in. We know every song that you know. And Roy said, y'all not even old enough to be in here. Get out of here. Roy let us hit the stage and we played the whole set with Roy. Every song he called, we played the shit out of. And I graduated, Ricky graduated. We got a call from Roy, you want to go out on the road? He called us and took us out on the road. Now, I graduated from high school. I was supposed to go to college. My dad was like, you ain't going nowhere. You're going to college. And I said, I'm sorry. I'm not going to college. And my mom said, I'll drive you to the airport. I'll take care of him. So we flew to New York, man, and played in this club called McHale's. And that's how I got started with Roy Ayers.
Wow, and this is like 74?
73, the end of 73 going to 74, yeah. Because I graduated in 72. So it was right out of high school, not too much longer.
Wow, that must have been incredible thrill. I mean, between going there and also who you were with, and wow. Yeah,
all my friends were going to college. We were going to New York to play, so we were in that New York scene with all the chicks, and it was in New York was killing there, and we had a ball. We stayed in Teaneck, New Jersey, near the Isley brothers. Ricky had an uncle that stayed there. They let us stay there. So we would drive every day back and forth from New York to New Jersey. His uncle had a big Cadillac. He used to let us drive it. So we were on cloud nine. We had a ball. We had a ball. So that's how I hooked up with Roy Ayers.
And
Mozambique, Ricky, going to New York.
What was Philip Wu a part of that band yet at that time?
Philip wasn't. We got Philip in the band later. Okay. Philip got in the band right after I left the band, and Ricky left the band. But Philip used to sit in with us when we would go to Seattle. So, getting back to the story, I was playing with Roy. Ricky was playing with Roy. Ricky got a call to go play with Quincy Jones, the Brothers Johnson. So he left the Roy Ayers band. We were in Seattle playing, and in Dugo, Carlos Santana and Carlos's manager came in the club, and they heard me playing with Roy. Carlos left the club and told Ndugu, I want that bass player. So Ndugu, he's a magical talker. He said, man, where you staying? I said, we're staying at the Edgewater Inn. He said, I'm staying there too. It ended up, me and Ndugu were in rooms right next to each other. So we stayed up all night talking. And he said, well, if you want the gig with Santana, you pretty much got it. I said, man, you got to be kidding. 2 days later, they called me to join the band with Santana, and I left Roy. I think he's just getting over being mad at me for that now.
Wow.
Yeah, so that's how I met Ndugu and got hooked up with Santana. And then Ndugu hooked me up with George.
Yeah.
So that whole thing happened right there.
Okay. So what was Roy like back in those days? How would you describe him?
Roy's a bad cat, man. Roy can really play. Roy was a really nice cat. Roy has a big ego, so he always keeps younger musicians. So he keeps you under his thumb. But Roy always was a little scared of me because I was from Detroit. He did a couple of things, and I told Roy, I said, man, you do that again, I'm out. I keep enough money in my pocket to buy a ticket. I'm out. So I always kept him off balance, but he was a great cat. He's a great cat, great player. And I learned a lot of music with Roy. Bad cat, music.
Yeah. And you played though on the Mystic Voyage record, right?
That was the first record I did in Seattle, Washington, where I met Ndugu and Carlos. Mm-hmm. During that same time, we were recording, and I met Santana. And that record came out, and maybe 3 weeks later, I left the band and went and played with Santana.
Right, that was my first record. I love that record, though. I mean, that's just a classic, jazz funk record of the era for sure.
Yeah, Roy Ayers, Chano O'Farrell, Ricky Lawson, Kelvin Brown. Yeah, it was a lot of fun playing with that band. We would play to clubs, packed lines around the corner. It was a hot band. It was a hot band. That's where I really learned how to. That's where I got my road chops at.
Mm-hmm.
Play with Roy, playing in every city in America. Funky hotels, good hotels. It was an experience.
Yeah.
The jazz circuit, the chitlin circuit.
During those shows, though, did some of the other jazz cats that you admired maybe come up from time to time and jam with Roy at all, or?
Yeah, well, we ran into a lot of cats. Johnny Hathaway, a lot of cats, man. But Roy was a stickler at that time about not letting people get up and play at that time. Mm. But Freddie Hubbard, George Benson, everybody wanted to see Roy in this young band he had. Patrice Rushen. I met Patrice when I was playing with Roy up in Frisco. Herbie Hancock came and checked us out once. So it was a lot of people that was coming to check out Roy at that time.
Yeah, I had Philip on the show a while back, and the way he described getting with Roy sounded kind of similar to how you did. He knew every Roy Ayers song right from the get-go, and so because of that, he got called up.
No, well, he knew Roy's songs, but Ricky Lawson got him in the band. We used to hang out with Philip Rue every time we went to Seattle, and Philip and Ricky got really tight. And Roy loved Ricky. They never had a falling out. Ricky went to play with Quincy, and Roy called Ricky looking for a keyboard player. Ricky put Wu with Roy. That's how Wu got the gig.
Well, but he says, though, he got it also because he knew all the material from the,
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wu's a bad cat, man.
Yeah, he's still in Japan. Yeah. So, moving to Santana, Byron, what was that transition like for you?
It was, like I said, my career has been magical. It was like, I used to sit in my basement with my two cousins, listening to Santana records, smoking weed, sneaking to smoke weed, listening to all that music. And the next thing I know, I'm at SIR in Frisco, the bass player for Santana. I went from making $250 a week with Roy Ayers to making $7,000 a week with Santana.
Wow.
And I was just a kid. So it was like, okay, I made it. I made it. I'm at the top of the world now. I made it. And that was the feeling. It was like a movie going to Hollywood and getting a big role in a film, and you're getting paid and you could do whatever you want to do. Paid off my mama's house, did a bunch of things. So it was like a dream come true. Yeah.
What about musically? Did it challenge you, or was right in your lane, or what?
It was in my lane at that time in my growth. After playing with Roy, I played all kind of music with Roy. I was swinging. I was, Roy did Latin music. It kind of got me ready for Santana. So I was doing Latin. Roy did a lot of Latin, African Latin music. And like I said, I grew up listening to Santana, so I knew his groove. As a bass player, if you know someone's groove, you pretty much got it. You can get in there. So between that and playing with Ndugu Chancellor, who was like my rock, I just kept my eye on Ndugu, so he kept me cool. But playing with Roy got me ready for that gig.
You must have played some big venues, bigger, I'm thinking, than Roy Ayers and that kind of thing, right?
Oh, yeah. We were doing stadiums. I did Anaheim Stadium out here in California. We did a tour where we opened up for the Grateful Dead, played in front of 200,000 people in open space. We did huge arenas. We did stadiums. So it went from doing clubs to doing stadiums to making money. And
Yeah.
plus, Carlos had a thing called profit sharing. So we would make a percentage of the gate. If it sold out, we got paid. We got paid extra. So between the profit sharing and per diem, I never had to cash my check. I was making out like a fat rat. Yeah.
Did
Yeah,
you
that's one of the best gigs I ever had.
did you get your own bass tech also and that kind of thing?
Oh, I had my own bass tech. I had my own everything.
Wow.
You know, I got picked up in airports with limos, and I stayed up in Frisco. I stayed in a hotel, the Miyako Hotel, so I had a suite there. I stayed there for 2 years. I ordered room service every day. Yeah, you really couldn't say nothing much to me. The only person that could say anything to me was my mama. You know, yeah, it was a good time.
Sounds awesome. And what was Carlos like? You know, how did he impress you musically and also just as a guy?
I guess I was more impressed because he was so famous. Carlos could play, and another thing that impressed me about Carlos is that he has a style. He developed his own style. He might not have been the technician and all of that, but he had his own style. When you heard him play, you knew who he was. And I tell young cats now, it's a lot of cats playing with the thumbs and doing all that. You have to develop a style. You gotta, people tell me, "Did you play on this record?" I said, "Yeah." I knew it was you because I could tell by your style. So Carlos, more than being a great musician, he has his own style. He's a stylist. Musically, personally, he's a weird cat, man. He's a weird dude, man. I mean, especially when I was playing with him. I think he's loosened up since then, but he kind of kept to himself. At that time, he was burning incense all the time. And I'm a young dude from Detroit. I'm like, man, what you doing?
Yeah.
You're burning incense. If you're on his floor on tour, you knew where he was because the floor smelled like incense. So to me, personally, I didn't understand him at that time. Didn't get in his way, didn't try because I was making good money. And I just kept to myself. Me and Duga hung out. And Armando Pedazo, who was, I think at that time, Armando was in his 70s. He just died recently, almost 98 or something like that. So there was a couple of people I hung with, and I just stayed to myself. Carlos is a great cat. It was a great experience. Weird dude, personally, but me.
Yeah, I could see that.
I have not talked to him one time since I was in the band. Not once since the 70s. Not once.
Wow. Well, maybe after seeing this, you'll hear from him.
I doubt it. But I would look forward to talking to him.
Yeah, but I definitely very distinctive style, no question about that, and his sound. Did you get any solo spots, or you just kind of played the cuts as they were? Or?
I don't remember soloing with Carlos. Nah. No, I just played the songs, man. And it was a high energy band, man. We used to go in, with Tom Costa, and it was a high energy band, and it was loud as hell. It was the loudest band I ever played with in my life. It was the first time I ever wore earplugs on stage. And Duga said, "You better use the earplugs, man, and you ain't be able to hear by the time you're 21." So, yeah, it was a loud band, and it was a great experience, though.
So the two of you must have just perfected your lock, in that band.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
I think what happened with me and Dugo is that I looked up to him as a big brother, and we became really, really close as friends. And that kind of translated to the way we played. And he respected me musically. And I was in awe of him, but, never took a back seat when we were on stage. If he was going for it, I'm going for it. I'm trying to kick his ass, he's trying to kick my butt. And we always looked at it like that. We would do a lot of sessions together, and we would do a take, and then walk out in the control room and look at each other and go, that's how we did. And we would walk out the studio and know that we kicked butt. You know, Heads and Shoulders, one of the greatest musicians I've ever played with was Ndugu Chancellor. There was nothing he couldn't play or read. He taught me how to read. He said, dude, if you read, you're going to take LA over. I said, okay, let's do this. You know, so I had, you know, it was cool.
Is there anything about his approach or technique that you can identify that sort of made him special?
Yeah. Ndugu played the drums. It's a rhythm instrument, but he played the drums like it was a keyboard or something. It's so melodic. All his drums had different note tones. He was one of the first cats I see that played with the rototone. And he was solo and just stopped playing and hug that rototone, and twist it to different notes and sing with it. And he was just so musical and melodic. I've never heard a drummer like that. And to this day, I really don't hear cats playing like that. And he was so ethnic. He was so African and funk at the same time. He had a mixture of a lot of different things. And technically, you know, I don't care. You could talk about any kind of music, time change or anything. You could not leave Ndugu in the back seat. He'd be there waiting for you. He knows what you're talking about. He's the only cat that I knew that could give George Duke a run for his money musically, technically, and that's not easy said. Herbie too. He all over Herbie. And Ndugu was at the top of his game.
Wow. Did you end up doing any studio stuff with Santana or just the tours?
Just a tour. Before I toured with him during the Amigos album. And before we could get to the next record, Carlos, he fired me and Greg Walker. And when he fired the two of us, Ndugu quit the band. But the band was getting too black for him. Mm. So he let us go. But he did me a favor, because that's when I hooked up with Duke.
So the two of you connected with Duke. So how did that transition take place?
Well, Ndugu had always recorded with Duke and played with Duke, and they did records. And George wanted to do the George Duke band, and he called Ndugu. And then Ndugu called George. He said, I got the bass player. So I flew. I remember the last few gigs I was doing, you know, I did Santana. The last few gigs I was doing with Santana, George was flying me I was rehearsing with Santana. He flew me to LA to record. And then I would fly back to rehearse with Santana the next day. And then not long after that, I got fired from Santana. I guess somebody told on me, something happened. And we started doing the first record. I Love the Blues, She Heard My Cry. That was my first record with Duke. And that's how I got with Duke.
That was 75 or 76?
76.
Yeah.
76, 77, maybe. It's 77. The beginning of 77, because the last tour I did with George Duke, with Santana, I think it was 76. Because I remember I have a luggage tag that has 76 on it right now. So it had to be 76.
The bicentennial year, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
So what was it like when you first went? Did you first play live with Duke, or you first went into the studio with Duke?
Studio.
Yeah.
What happened was I flew to LA and Ndugu picked me up at the airport. I remember I had a little cassette player that I was taking with me to the rehearsal with George Duke for the record, because we rehearsed at his house. And I think I had one of them 90-minute tapes, and I left the recording on for some reason. So the recording had Ndugu picking me up from the airport, me and him talking all the way to George Duke's house, the rehearsal with George Duke, and George put music in front of me too. But I guess Duke already told him, well, he ain't read notes, but he can read chord changes. So we rehearsed for maybe a half an hour for that whole record. And the next day we went in the studio, man, and we were in the studio a couple of days and did the whole record.
Wow.
And I have it all on a cassette player. I still have the cassette of the time I met Duke, and Duke would pick me up from the airport, the ride, the rehearsal, and leaving. It was a 120-minute tape. That's what it was. Yeah.
Well, you've got some good keepsakes between the luggage tag and the recording, and
I got all kind of stuff, man. I got all kind of stuff. Yeah.
What would you say? How did Duke impress you when you first met him? You know, just personally and later on musically.
My first impression was, damn, this cat's nice. No ego, nice. You know, he started calling me B right away. B, you need something? You want a drink? His wife Corrine was sweet to me. Just nice, and he went from nice to, when he got on that keyboard, it was all about taking care of business. And at that point, you have to focus. And I had never really played in odd time signatures before. And he had one song that was in odd time signatures, and Duke just said, "Watch me. Every time I hit the cymbal, that's one. Watch me." That's how I learned how to play in odd time signature. But Duke challenged me musically in every way you could think of, from being from a young cat all the way up to right before he died, because I did so many records with him, so many different kinds of music. You know, like I said, him and the Duke were, bar none, the most accomplished musicians I've ever been around. George Duke was an incredible musician. I remember I was riding with him on the airplane. He was sitting next to me. He was writing music, and I said, "What are you doing?" He said, "I'm writing a song." I said, "Well, how you doing that? You don't have your piano." He said, "I don't need that." Wrote a song. He said, "I'll play it for you at sound check." And that was incredible to me, where he could hear the chords and write it out and know exactly what it was without having to play anything. You know, so just the musicianship was like on cloud nine, on planet get out of here. You know, it's just crazy. From funk to anything, gospel, anything, any kind of music. You have to play everything.
How familiar were you with his catalog before you went to play with him?
I was pretty familiar with it. Like I said, I came up listening to Duke, Herbie, you know, listening to Quincy records and all that CTI records, George Benson and Hubert Laws, and you know, I knew about Ron Carter and Ray Brown, Chuck Rainey and Donald Byrd and Blackbirds and all of that.
What about like some of the real crazy stuff that Duke was doing too, like Zappa, you know, and that kind of thing?
Oh yeah, Yellow Snow and all of that. Yeah, I was listening to all that stuff. I thought Zappa was out of his mind.
Yeah.
You know, that was some bad stuff. I still listen to that stuff. I went to Sweden maybe 4 years ago to do a tribute to Duke and Zappa. It had to play some of that Zappa music with every time you turn your head, it's a different time signature. Crazy, but I have fun doing it. It was a challenge doing it. But
everything I've heard about Duke was just that he was a sweetheart.
Sweetheart, nicest cat in the world. Yeah, no ego, none of that. Just straight up nice cat. Straight up.
So, tell us about the making of Reach For It, the album, and then we'll talk about the track. You know, what was the vibe like, you know, and what do you remember about those sessions?
Well, we got to go ahead of the studio. We were playing, the Duke Band, we were playing in Washington, D.C. at the Cellar Door Club. That was the name of it. And there was a section in the show where me and Duke would just play. So one particular night, we started playing and it got funky, and George started playing that bass line. And I think I might have soloed a half an hour in the club. People were going crazy. Chicks were throwing their drawers at me. All kind of stuff was happening. And we got off the road. We went in the studio. George said, "You remember that night? Let's do that." Told Kerry McNabb to hit record, and we went for it. It was just a bass solo and George and the Dougal funky. And then all the vocal stuff, they put on that later. But it was Reach For It, that track. I know the track was probably 8 minutes, but we probably played that in the studio for about 25 minutes. George edited. He did his little edits. Him and the Dougal went on and did the talking part. We added guitar, and it was George's biggest hit, his first gold record. We all got a piece of the writers of that too.
That's beautiful. I can't say enough about that track though. You know, I mean, it's just such a classic, amazing groove, and I never get tired of hearing it. You know, there's not like a lot of lyrics or anything going on in it, but I never get tired of hearing that groove. And I would love to hear the 25-minute version too that you just mentioned. Crazy,
man. So he did that. There was another record he did, The Son of Reach For It, where he put another section of that solo in it. You got to go on YouTube and find that, The Son of Reach For It. And that's just a whole nother section of stuff that I was playing. But George did the first part of solo was pretty much intact. He did a little edit. And when I heard it, I was like, damn, that's me? Wow. And they put that sucker out, man. It was #1 in like 2-3 weeks. Matter of fact, we were in Europe playing, and we got a word from Sony that the record had went #1. So we had to come back to the States and start doing all these big concerts with LTD and Confunction, and we were out there. Now we were a funk band. Yeah. So that song started at the Cellar Door Jazz Club. Really a jam. It was a jam, but with the big ears of Duke, and he's so incredible, he heard it and he was like, okay, I'm gonna take this in the studio. I'm gonna do something with this. So thank you, Duke, because that put me on the map. Yeah.
So were some of the words sort of improvised in the studio, or some of the rapping words in it and stuff like that?
The rapping word, George and the Dougal sat down and did that because Duke was a big fan of the Funkadelic. What happened was how George got turned out. And I wish he was here to tell the story. One day, after we did the From Me to You album, and Dougal came to George and gave him a Funkadelic record. George played that record and it changed his life. George was already funky, but he was more funky after that. And that's how the talking stuff. That's when Duke came out of his bag and started talking like Clinton a little bit, but he had his own thing too. So and Dougal gave him a Funkadelic record, and the rest is history.
Well, actually, the track always made me think of Bootsy more than George, but just has some of that Bootsy vibe.
Yeah, it was. It's all in the family, right?
Yeah. Did you or the other guys ever go see the Mothership show with P-Funk?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Me and Dougal, we didn't miss a show. We didn't miss a Funkadelic show. We didn't miss an Earth, Wind, and Fire show. And Dougal thought he was Maurice White on the slide because he wanted to be Maurice White. We caught all the shows. Weather Report. It was me and Dougal. In the Dougal, you see me. And we caught all the shows. We caught all the shows. We wanted to see what everybody was doing.
And then Reach For It, I think, if I'm remembering correctly, I don't have the record in front of me, but there was another funk track on that called Watch Out, Baby, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Stanley.
Yeah.
That was Stanley. Yeah, that was my first experience hearing Stanley play in the studio. Because George said, hey, man, don't be feeling some kind of way. I got a song I need Stanley to play on. I said, Stanley who? He said, Stanley Clarke. I said, oh, okay. And that was a magical session. Those three, it was crazy. It was crazy. And me and Stanley are still like really tight from that day. Yeah, that was a crazy session because Stanley was playing this new bass. It had a steel neck. It was a Kramer, I think, a Kramer bass, and he had that sucker talking. I don't even think he plays it anymore, but that was a great session. That's the first time I met Stanley personally. I used to go see Chick play, and I would see Stanley, but that was the first time I met Stanley. It was in Paramount Studio out here in California on that section, because George had him play that and another song where he played upright.
When did you relocate to Southern California?
Officially, I played with Santana, and I was staying in Frisco in a hotel, and then I ended up, when I left Santana, I moved down here to California. So that must have been 70, like right before I got with Duke, 76. Because I know we did 77. We did Reach For It, 77, 78. Those years run into each other for me now. I'm getting older, and I ain't remember like I used to.
Yeah.
So.
Plus, back then,
I had a sister here. My big sister was here. My brother was here. All my siblings were here at that time. They got tired of the snow in Detroit, so they moved out here. And I was on the road, and then I moved here.
I was going to say that plus back then, the acts were tending to put out like a record every single year, sometimes 2 records in a year. So it's hard to remember exactly, the years.
Yeah.
But, and Duke, you guys came back with Don't Let Go in 78. They had Dookie Stick, another all-time classic. So I imagine, did Duke communicate that he kind of wanted to take that formula and go back and kind of repeat that success?
Duke was a musical genius. He knew what bought him that mansion over there in the Hollywood Hills, after Reach For It. So he would come in the studio with his chart and say, hey, man, we're going to do this. And it was Dookie Stick. B, I need you to take a solo right here. And Dougal, I need you to say this. And so he kept that formula, that funk formula from Reach For It, all the way up until Dougal left the band. They fell out about a couple of things, and then Dougal left. So it kind of changed the funk in the band, because Ricky Lawson got in the band after that.
But Don't Let Go in particular, I don't know if all the credits are on the record or not, but I mean, that was like more of a tight, really an all-star band that was happening then. I mean, Sheila E. was doing percussion and...
Yeah. Don't Let Go, Sheila E., Napoleon Murphy Brock from Frank Zappa, Josie James, Len Davis. Was Len in the band at that time? We had a few background singers, but really were lead singers though. Sybil Thomas, Rufus Thomas' daughter, was in the band. Dee Hendrix was in the band for a minute. Icarus Johnson, guitar player. Icarus was a bad boy. He was in the band. I haven't talked to Icarus in years. I hear he's doing his own blog now. He's a trumper, so I don't really talk to Icarus no more. But it was a great band.
Yeah. And I don't know if you remember, and I, of course, didn't know you then, but I saw the show that was done at the Roxy on Sunset in Hollywood right around that time.
Really?
Yeah.
Ian and Dougal had the big white boots on that came up to our knees.
Yeah, I used to go to all those Roxy shows. The Roxy was happening back then.
We used to turn the Roxy out. Yeah. Yeah, that was a good time. Yeah. I remember the Roxy shows. Yeah.
I think
first time I played at the Roxy was with Roy Ayers, though.
I missed that one.
Yeah, that was funky too.
I think it was all of maybe like $6, at that time.
That's it? Yeah, you can't do nothing with $6 no more.
Nah. So, did you guys rehearse a lot? Was that part of the thing too?
We rehearsed before we did a record. And we rehearsed before we did a record, and then we would rehearse before we did a tour. George didn't believe in going out there messing up. We did rehearse because he was a stickler on playing the music right, and Duga was the mistake police. If you made a mistake, and Duga looking at you like you're crazy, So we rehearsed. You don't just play that music and just think you're gonna walk out there and do it. We rehearse a lot. Yeah.
Was there anyone that you guys shared the stage with on any of those sets that you did that just really kind of blew your mind, that you were very impressed with? You mentioned some of the acts that you guys went out with on the funk circuit.
On the funk circuit, LTD, them cats were bad, man. That kind of changed Duke a little bit too. And Duke, during that time, Duke and Jeffrey Osborne got tight, and Duke started producing Jeffrey's. There was a lot of bad cats out there. We did some shows with Rick James. He had a badass band. A lot of those bands at that time were tight. We were like funk jazz though. We could play the funk, but then we would turn heads by playing some odd time stuff in the middle of a funk show. And that was fun to do too. And then we had Sheila. We'd give her part of the show, and she was young and fine at that time too. She would just turn it out by herself. So we had a lot of different go-to people in that band. And Duga would play. Duke could always look at me, and anytime he looked at me, I was ready to play. So, at that time, this is when I started knowing how to solo and how to do my thing at that time and develop my style, and which I'm still doing. I'm still playing the same old stuff, but it's still getting down, still making his turn.
Love that. Gotta keep it going. Well, the great thing about those albums back then was the variety on those Duke albums. I mean, it went all over the place. It was like a trip around the world to listen to those records.
Yeah, that was Duke though. Duke was just musically. I'm sure he had musical ADD. He couldn't stay one place. He was just all over the place. Brazilian music, funk music, just everything. And you had to play all those different styles to play with him. You just couldn't be a funk cat, which I thought I was, until Ndugu and George beat me up. And, they didn't teach me. They just put it, come on, and I had fun doing it, learning those different styles of music.
How did being able to read music kind of change your life, if at all?
It just took a little bit of the stress off going to play a recording session. I still don't like reading music. Mm-hmm. I hate it. But I wouldn't have to go to the studio and sit and watch the piano player's bass hand or say, can you play this lick? So I would know how to do that, but I would still change the line around and make them love it. You could write me a bass line until I don't play it and make you love what I did. So I did. I made a huge amount of money doing that. But it makes it easier to play TV shows and different things when you don't have a lot of time to rehearse. If you could put your eyes on it, it makes it much easier.